RC fans, Racing 393. I've not been on the LMP scene for a short period, just time really, to be honest. But I thought I'd do a new video explaining what my plans are. Now, first and foremost, the LMP scene, if you like, most of it now, because it's indoor, has pretty much stopped. I mean, you can find places that they still do them. I get it, like the GT12 indoor club level. But majority of the LMP scene now is kind of, from my understanding, it's a little bit more, it runs through the winter. However, this coming Sunday, another RC channel, namely RCKicks, they've arranged like just a get together basically, and it just so happens that it's not far from where I live. It's about 45 to 50 minutes away from where I reside. So they've done this before. They had an RCKicks get together, so fellow people who into RC, they hired a hall out and they all turned up. The first time they did this, I was tempted. It's a little bit too far north for my liking. I think they tried to keep it in the sort of middle part of the UK so people could get there from either way. And I was tempted, but I just felt it's just a little bit out of my area. However, a second event is now been arranged, and that's this Sunday, the 23rd of April. And I've got a ticket and I've put myself down to a meet and greet meeting, if that makes sense. They can run all sorts of RC cars there. So I'm going to take this because I haven't used it since putting that in there. So I don't really know how it's going to go. One of my main issues with LMP12 is the fact that I just need the practice. I just wish there was somewhere where I could go along to practice. There probably are places, but I don't want to sit there and race or get in and muck people's evenings up just by me going around getting in the way. I was improving on my last time out in this down at Eastbourne. So there are videos in my description. If you wish to watch any of those, I'll make sure I link them. So yeah, so this event is basically run throughout the whole day on Sunday, and it has, I think there's 2 slots for what they call pan cars or Formula 1 cars or carpet racers. So that would be handy for me to try and dial this in. I will also take another car with me. I'll probably take my Hot Shot 2, the Blockhead edition, because they'll run a 4-wheel drive buggy new, and they run different classes. It depends on what you want to run. They run like vintage or fragile cars. It's not a race, so the good thing is you're not round there having to race with the people. You're round there just to try. I'm going to treat it like a practice session, and because it's so local, it's absolutely ideal for me. Now, what's this video about then? Well, a couple of things. It's the same setup. The only thing that's changed on this, as I showed you, is the servo. It's a Schumacher servo, from what I can gather, a decent servo. So in this video, we're gonna go over just some checks on settings. I was speaking to somebody, I can't remember who it was. I think I do know who it was. I can never remember his name. He's told me twice. I feel so stupid. You know who you are because you're the drift craze. Oh, I don't know. I'll tell you what. I know him. I watched him. He was actually on YouTube the other day, actually, because it was the LMP European Championship, and I saw him, and I thought, oh, there he is. And I was trying to sort of picture him and what his name was on the list, but it didn't compute. I'm so sorry who you are. I mean, I feel such a dick. But anyway, a lot of info has come from this chap, and he really has helped, because you don't realise how much you've helped. There's a couple of you, but he was talking to me at the meeting. Anyway, what he did mention was, because when I raced this car last, it's just so freaking hard to drive. It's probably me, but there is an element I think that's doing, it's odd. It's either a driving style, which I need to change, or is set up. So when you go around a corner at pace, so you're trying to power through a corner, or it pushes. So the car goes very wide. And then to counter that, you come off the throttle. It then digs in and almost spins. I did put a little bit of that down to the type of tyres I was running. However, it does tend to be a little bit of a trait. When you listen to, especially, say, online stuff that I watched at the weekend at the European, and then from what I can remember when I watched the racing when I was at Eastbourne, you can hear the cars powering out of and through the corners, depends on what line they're on, but they're powering round. That is what I can't do. So that, to me, is not so much, it is that, all right, let me start again. It is a skill, don't get me wrong, but there's also setup. There's obviously, they may be easier to drive. Now, I do run a diff on this, which should make it easier. So anyway, I've got a spool, or what is it called, a spool? It's a solid axle with no diff. I've got one of those, which came with a kit. Not planning on putting that on just yet, but the reason for this video is to go through setup, measuring, and I'll try and go over it with you. Now, first things first, I did buy some different tyres. Now, I've got quite a few tyres this now. The difference on this one, it came from Zen Racing, because they know what they're doing. And although I turned my own tyres down, I got them to do it for me. So I took a measurement, which I was told, front and rear. I've got a ghost in this house. There's things moving that shouldn't move. So these front tyres, I did myself. And they're not perfectly round. That's probably me. And the rear tyres I did myself. Now these are the original tyres that I got, that I raced. It tend to go better with these. Because I did have some tyres which matched these wheels, the sort of the rears, but I didn't turn them down. I will do that. But I'm not going to do it for this session because it's just going to run these. I'll run some new tyres, some additive, assuming we're allowed to, of course, but I'm assuming we will. And I'm just testing the car out for its handling, turning characteristics, and go from there. So I need it to be easier to drive. So I've got these, as I said, of Zen Racing. What ones are these? These are 30 soft. JT2, I can show you, can't I? The same on the front. I know there's going to be people that say, well, you don't want to use them, you want to use this compound. I kind of understand that, but I think for now, when I put these tyres on, you can see how thin they're. They're a lot thinner than what these ones are. Compared to a non-turned down version of these front tyres, it handled so much better. So it was so different. I should have known this anyway, but anyway, it is what it is at the moment. So first things first, I need to get it sat on the wheels and tyres that it's going to run. So I'm going to change the tyres on it at the moment. I want to make sure I don't get them all mixed up. It's knowing where they go, isn't it? Because once they're on the car, I haven't got a clue what's on the car now, if it makes sense. But anyway, let me do that. Let me swap the tyres over. And I'll be back in a minute, because you don't need to watch me take wheels and tyres off. Wheels. And I'll be back in a minute with the car sat on the deck, ready for some setup. I'm not sure how many parts this video will be in. I'm hoping to get it all done in this part, like up to the point when I'm going to the track. Again, it just depends on how and what time I've got. So let me just get the car down on the deck. So I've just taken the tyres I used off, got these new ones, taken the bearings out, cleaned the bearings, and I've just run a little bit of super glue around the edges, sort of the outside of the wheels, to hopefully minimise any chipping. It obviously will still chip. The idea is not to hit anything, but you know, we are talking about a noob, so things do happen. So yeah, I've just literally put a small film of super glue around the edge of each tyre, but only on the outside. So I'm going to put them on. I'll put a little bit of bearing fluid on the bearings. I'll check the bearings. They're not, because sometimes they damage. Sometimes the inner, where the race is, where the sort of the covering is, that sometimes that does get damaged, but they seem okay at the moment. So anyway, let me get these on the car. So that's the wheels and tyres on, as you can see, and now it's on my surface plate. I think, at least I know now that the tyres are equal because they're done by a professional rather than me doing it. I will need to turn these rear ones down because I used these front ones here at the last race meeting I did. I turned these down. That was just lazy of me. I just couldn't be bothered. And then I tried them and it makes such a difference. So there's absolutely no point putting tyres on which haven't been prepared. Now, the ironic thing in my head is why do they make the tyres the diameter they are when they're new? In this case, something like 46mm circumference, only to then to turn down to like 43 or whatever you do. You take most of the stuff off. Why don't they make them smaller anyway? So it kind of would fit an all size fits all. Then if you wanted to turn them down, you could. But if you didn't, you'd still be reasonably competitive. Reasonably, I mean, we're not talking top level, but just going down to a club and racing LMP12 in a tyre that's just bolted on and used, just treated and used. There's obviously a reasoning for that, but anyway, it is what it is. So those I'm going to turn down. This one, I'm going to just quickly measure the ride heights because 3mm all round seems to be a good starting point. Okay, so I've got the ride height gauge. It's got different measurements on it, so I can see here this is more evens, and they're the odd numbers. They're the ones in between. So I'll try the evens first because that's how it is. Now, no, whether you should do the front. I'm going to do, my idea would be to do each corner just behind, well, in this case, you know, just behind the front wheel, or just behind the front wheel, yes, and then just in front of the rear wheel. I'll take 4 measurements. I've not written anything down. I know I probably should, because that's the whole, I've been in this before where you make changes, don't know what they are. It goes better, you try something else, and by the time you are a couple of races down the road or whatever, you've forgotten what you've done. So I'm going to have to write these down. I will do that in a second, but let's see what they are at the minute. So looking at that one there, that's too high. That's reading 4.6mm. Got to lower the front. I know this is not going to be a simple job. I think the back's way higher as well. So just in front of the rear wheel, and I can almost get that almost fully under. It's almost hitting the other side. Well, that's like 5.4mm. If I try the other side, so the rear wheel here, just so that stops at about 5. So that's different. So that could be an issue. That door is definitely an issue. And that one there, that stops at 4.2. Okay, right, so clearly the car's not sitting straight. Someone mentioned, well, that same person mentioned to me that the tweak could be out. So the back of the chassis could be tweaked. Now, I'm going to be open here. My only understanding of that is this rear subframe pod, as they call it, is under tension. And you probably have to disassemble it all to make sure this pod is sitting flat. I'm at that point now where, I think, what am I doing? Well, I know what to do. It's just what to do first. What shall I do first? That is quite high. So to lower the front, there's spaces that can go underneath the front here, which I've got. To lower the rear, I've got to take the rear axle out, and I could just put the rear axle hangers in there, just some slightly lower ones. I think first off, the first thing I need to do is I'm going to take another measurement of the corners, and I'll probably do the ends as well, and I'm going to write it down. And I'll show you my findings. You probably know anyway. The funny thing is that I wish it's just a case of put it on there, quick measurement, undo that, do that up, change that, put it back on. But it's not like that. I know that from corner weights in stock car racing. It's never like that. It's just I'm a little bit like, I'm like a duck that's paddling. So I'm not out of water, but I'm not in water. No, that's not it. It's not a duck, is it? What am I trying to say? A fish. What did I say a duck for? Because a duck's perfectly happy on the land. Oh my God. I'll leave that in there because I actually believed that then. Flipping heck. I meant a fish. So even a fish half out is no good, is it? So a fish in water would be someone that knows what they're doing. A fish out of water isn't me. And a fish halfway in is not good either. You know what I mean? There's an analogy there somewhere. Right, I'm going to take a measurement now because what am I talking about? Ducks and fish. Okay, now. Anyway, let me just take some measurements properly and I'll write them down. I'll be back. So I've just measured it. I've done 4 measurements. Looking at the chassis, apart from the rear, right at the back, you can't really do the front because the bit... You can't really see where it's touching the chassis because you've got to take the front off. Maybe, and because of the bumper, and you've got this sort of this bit here, and you've got the chassis which is slightly lower underneath, but you can't see where it's touching. So I guess maybe the front and rear isn't as important, or is it just in the centre of the chassis? Because it should be flat, shouldn't it? Anyway, I've kind of done 4 measurements. I will do the centre just to... Well, you can't really see it because of those bars. So I'm guessing... Yeah, because these... Unless you're not meant to take all them off, are you? Don't know. I've got to be able to see where it's going under. It's got to touch the edge of the chassis. And you can't... The front and in the middle, you can't really see it properly. Unless there's another way. Anyway, it's wrong, whichever way I look at this. So the left front, this can you see that? I don't know if you can see that, can you? I'm pointing. Yeah. This one, best of my knowledge and best of my ability, based on that, get 4.8 millimeter. So that's wrong. That one, for some reason, so something must be caught, bent, twisted, or is 4.4. I will take another measurement just to check this in a minute. So that's wrong. It's leaning that way if necessary. I mean, the numbers do point to that. This rear one is 5.4 millimeter. And that rear one, can you see that? You can see I'm pointing, yeah, 5.2. So that's 0.2 of a difference. And that's 0.3. Well, no, 0.4. That one's 0.4. That's hard. So something's wrong. So to do with the fact that the pod might be tweaked, I think what I might do is, before I change any ride heights, on the rear, by the way, is 5.8, if that's accurate. I'm not too fussed about that. It's these 4 points here because that's the base of the car. I mean, I suppose the other bit would be just in front of the wheel, surely, because you can see the chassis there. I'll do that on camera quickly. So that side, that's now says on there, I don't know how to read that. Is that 4.6? Where there it might be, that one should be 4.8, if I do that right. Yeah, so it's definitely a 4.8 there. And there's a 4.6. So it has got some rake in it. So that would be a good starting point. So the first thing I'm going to do, by the time I've done this, well, by the time you see this, I'll have done it. You'll see my findings, and anyone that's got feedback, please tell me what I should be doing. Should I be stripping this down? I'm asking you now, because I probably wouldn't have done that. Tell me what I should be doing. Unless I've got a bent Schumacher surface plate. That's unlikely. But I don't want this video to go on and on and on, but what I'm trying to do is film my processes for getting to a practice session, which is what I'm going to treat it as. The socialising side of it. I don't know. Oh no, I won't say what no, it doesn't matter. I'll be unpopular. No, I won't even go there. You probably know. It's just a practice session. And that's what I want to make it easier to drive. Yeah, anyway, I'm sort of digressing in my head. So I'm going to, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to perhaps undo some of the chassis, settle it down, and then just nip it up. These have all been Loctited. The things that are stiffened, like these chassis stiffeners. I think it's probably more to do with the back, like the tweak station. I mean, when I do that, it feels heavier here. Just by, if I can feel it, there's something wrong. That it does feel slightly heavier this side. Just the pressure. And that side is 5.2 millimeters there, and that side is 5.4. So clearly, I mean, the motor is offset as well. It is more that way, isn't it? So I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to do what I think I should be doing. I'm going to undo some of these fixing points. I've used a very weak lock thread. I should be able to sort of do them back up, and they should be fine. So let me do that and see if I can get get the car, even it might be wrong, but more level. Let me just go through that process and I'll be back. Okay, so after a bit of messing about, it's still not perfect, so I'm going to sort of ask the people that know, let me know what I'm doing, what I need to do. I think I know what I might need to do. So what I did, I've put a couple of shims on the front, just to lower the front a little bit. And then I just lowered the rear axle. I haven't done the screws up yet on top. What I'm thinking is, do I need to take this rear pod off to check it? I don't know. But once I've now got it settled in and flat, moved backwards and forwards and sort of compressed and sat in its normal ride height position, it's very minor. So the left front, I'm measuring it under here, 3.9 millimeters. So it can still go lower, but I'm happy I'm in the threes anyway. The right front, so this side, 3.8. That is lower than that side. So that would be, I'm put on there because looking at it from left to right, 0.1 of a millimeter. This one here is 3.7 millimeters. I'm sort of measuring it underneath here at the back. I've done it a few times. So 3.7 is about what I can see. This side, 3.4. It's definitely not 3.7. I've moved it. I've changed the ride height gauge both ways. I've just double, treble, and quadruple checked. It's definitely, according to that gauge, lower. So that side's a bit lower. That side's more lower. That could, is that, I mean, what is that? That's 0.3. So it's lower at the back than the front. Now, I don't know what else do I need to do. There's got to be an element of an user error. It might not be, when someone else measured it, they'll probably measure it different and the readings might be slightly different, but I've kept it as universal as I can. So it's sitting down at the rear, at the back, and over to that side more. Now it could be, well, I don't know. To me, it can be just where something's tweaked. Now, the actual, I've undone the bolts on top. Haven't done the unbolts on the bottom, really. But is it probably something to do with this pod at the back? Would you say it's that? And what do I need to do? What's the best way to get this true? Do I need to take it all off? Take the motor out, take the back off, put it on a surface plate, make sure it's sitting square, make sure nothing's twisted. It could be these side bits, I suppose. But let me know what I need to do. This will be in 2 parts now, I guess. I think I'll just wait to see what somebody says, and I'll follow that through. I think I've got to take this off. If I don't hear back from anybody, I will probably remove the rear pod before the weekend. It's not like for lap times, but I just want to make sure that when I take the car out, it's as good as I can get it set up. And do I notice a difference? But anyway, this can take hours and hours. So I'm going to leave that there at the moment, and I will be back for part 2. Now, whether I show you what I've done or I'll talk to you what I've done on the way to the track, I don't know yet. I'm so busy. I don't know what times I'm going to have. So part 2 will definitely follow with an update or a follow through. But let me know your thoughts, please. Let me know what I should be doing. And I mean, I don't really need to know it should be 3.4. And if it's got to be lower, I get that. I understand that. I can work on that. I just need to know what I need to do to get it more equal all over. But anyway, very enjoyable, very time consuming. Will it make a difference? Well, that I'll look forward to. Anyway, I'll see you for part 2. For an update, either way, on the way, if you know what I mean. So thank you in advance, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.